Fake news. Faker news. A media controlled by people.
All right, so what's are we live? Let's see here. Are we live? I'm showing that we're live. Are we live? No, not yet. Having trouble with video. All right, I think we're coming up here. Okay. They're having trouble with the video. Why are we not? Okay, we are online. Let's give it a go.
Fake news. Faker news. A media controlled by people pushing their own agenda. Fake news. Well, that stops here. This is the Larry Thorpe Show, with all the fake news that dominates the media. This is your cozy little home for the truth. Larry Thorpe is a U.S. Army veteran and a serial entrepreneur. Originally from Chicago, he actually moved to Phoenix, Arizona a few years ago, looking for freedom from political tyranny. A constitutional conservative, Larry Thorpe, bringing value and holding the media accountable for the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle in. This is the Larry Thorpe Show.
All right, that's fun. Oh, let's see here. It looks like... Yep, let's take a look. All right. So, the phone lines are open. Go ahead and call in at 520-900-TALK. Okay, that's 520-900-8255. I'm planning on just being on here all night and watching the results with everybody. I've got a blank map up in the top right corner, and hopefully we can watch that turn red throughout the evening. And I don't really have a whole lot of content planned. I'm just going to be, we're going to be going with it as they come. If you got any information that you want to share with us, go ahead and throw it into the comments on this feed and I'll be able to see it, or call in. Again, the call-in number is 520-900-TALK. That's 520-900-8255. Okay. I've got live coverage running in the back, okay, from Fox News, and we'll be playing with that throughout. It looks like they just called Kentucky for Trump, so let's get that changed right here. All right, and looks like New Hampshire, they're not calling yet. Okay. Ohio, ow. Okay, 21% in, and it looks like 62% of that's for Biden. 46% to Biden in South Carolina. All right, so definitely not the kind of numbers that we've wanted to see so far, but I'm optimistic for the evening. I think that we're going to see a lot of the media trying to call this stuff real early. And the reality of it is that polls have just started to close on the East Coast. So I think that we're going to be in for a good night. Hang on here. All right. Ohio too early to call. I'm looking forward to Florida. Florida is it looked like there were only 3 Democrat counties in Florida earlier today. And 2 of them were by less than 50 votes. So if you've ever heard that or thought that your vote didn't count, that absolutely is not the case, especially this year. Okay. Now, a little bit of information. Some stuff came up in Arizona today. What they're calling Sharpie Gate. It looks like Fontes swapped out some ink pens for some Sharpies. I know when I went to vote that they gave me a small Sharpie, small tip Sharpie to do it with. I just wanted to tell everybody that those votes do count. When I had them scan my vote in, it read everything. The only thing that it does bleed through. However, the way the ballots are set up, everything is offset, and the computer it reads the dots based on the lines on the edges, along the edges. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. All right, let's check in with Fox News here and see what we've got going on.
Handle is very significant to the Trump team. What are you hearing?
Well, first in Fulton County, they are going to keep those polls open until 9 o'clock to give people the chance to cast their votes if they're still in line or had an issue with the water main break earlier in the day. But down to Florida, if Joe Biden doesn't turn the numbers around in Miami-Dade County, he's in for a rough night, and President Trump is on his way to a victory in that state which President Trump needs to win tonight. He can't lose Florida in order to win. But you had a number of Biden campaign surrogates over the last week sounding the alarm about the lack of turnout among Black and Latino voters in Miami-Dade. You had James Carville begging for enthusiasm for Joe Biden in that county. And so we'll see if Joe Biden can make up the numbers in that county for the rest of the night as we continue to get those votes in. But overall, the Panhandle, of course, is Trump country, and we'll wait to see if those voters turned out as the Trump campaign is depending on and believes that they will.
Yeah, Britt Hume, Florida?
Just with regard to the elderly vote in Florida, which is critical in that state. There was a Quinnipiac poll about a month ago that had Biden up like 15 points with the elderly. It was widely thought that the elderly vote in that state was going to swing toward Biden. So far, 65 voters 65 and older, Trump leading by the narrowest margin, 50 to 49. Now, obviously, he'd like to be winning by more than that. But that's a lot different picture than we were getting not very many weeks ago, which way the senior vote was going in Florida. So that might be encouraging to the Trump campaign.
Think about how many stops that both campaigns made in Florida, in North Carolina. in Georgia. Those three southern states are going to be really crucial, and we're getting ready for the next poll close, and we may have some more calls in just seconds.
The polls are closing in 18 states. 175 electoral votes are up for grabs. What happens in this hour could define America.
We are going to win my home state of Florida. We win Florida, and it's all over.
The people are choosing. The votes are in. Who will cross the threshold? Who will be the president of the United States of America?
It may come down to Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I'm looking at some strange stuff going on right now in Virginia. Check this out. All right, so all right, if you can see that, it looks like 57% of the vote is for Donald Trump, and 40% of the vote is for Joe Biden, and they are calling it for Joe Biden. All right, that is Associated Press calling it for Joe Biden, and I'm not really sure why. Oh, we got our first caller here. Hey, Dino, how you doing?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. All right, so we got David Martino on the line out in Queens, New York, giving us a call. Now, see, I remember you from when you were working on Barack Obama's campaign. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man.
You know, I'm
actually coming to you live from northeastern PA.
Oh, you're in Pennsylvania? Did you vote in Pennsylvania? We absolutely needed your vote in Pennsylvania.
Well, you know what? I just changed my residency up here, so I actually voted in New York.
I'm so glad to hear you're getting out of there.
Me too. My family voted up here, though.
That's fantastic.
My family voted up here, which is really good. So I'll be a full-fledged. I'm actually a full-fledged resident right now. Just didn't make it under the deadline. That's all.
Okay. Well, we had 12,000. So get this. Pennsylvania was in the news earlier. 12,000 Amish registered to vote for the very first time last week, and they did a Trump train, or I guess a Trump carriage ride or hayride into town to vote for their very first election this year. They voted for Trump.
It's a beautiful thing.
Isn't it amazing? Absolutely fantastic. So, interesting story. I was at the gun show over the weekend, and one of my customers comes up to me, and he was talking to me about politics, and he wanted to know if I'd seen this video. And it was a Tucker Carlson video off Fox News, and he pulls it up, and an ad pops up on YouTube, and lo and behold, guess whose face pops up? I'll give you one hint. He's on the line.
Say it again.
No, yeah. So he comes up to me. He turns on this Tucker Carlson video, and all of a sudden, your ad pops up about your walkaway ad for that you just did, the new commercial that you just did. They're running it all over YouTube. I saw it the other day on one of my customers' phones.
I'm glad to hear that. I hope it helps in whatever way it can. It's mind-boggling. Right now, we're basically running against all the tech giants and the media establishment, and the Democrats. It's mind-boggling what we're up against, but it's like it puts my soul on fire to know that that the people in this country are rising up and doing what we need to do to defend our nation. It's I think the biggest problem we face is how socialism has been just infiltrating education and government and organizations. It's terrible, because it's the tyranny of the few, and everybody else's quality of life goes down, down, down.
Yeah,
and so
it's
that's why
horrible.
when they asked me to do that video, I was really happy to do it because
So tell us a little bit about that. Now,
that's what drives me.
I'll play the video here in a minute, but tell us a little bit about that and tell us a little bit about your story. A lot of callers don't know who you are. So
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about tell us a little bit about your background here.
Okay. Born and raised in Queens, New York, like our president. Very proud of that. But I spent the bulk of my adult life, bulk of my career in politics, living in Chicago and working various states in the Midwest and even back in New York at times and things like that. You know, working on campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
Right out of college, I landed a job on the campaign for the late Congressman Lane Evans. He was a progressive Democrat in Western Illinois, and I made my way out there and worked for $70 a week and lived in a host family's house and worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week to basically advance the cause of working people in the country. That's really what drives me.
Okay.
And that's what drove me then. And I ended up working for a labor union out of Chicago, and they would loan me to different campaigns. They would put me on loan to different campaigns, and depending on what the laws were, we always stayed within the laws of, the finance laws. And so when I went to work for the Obama campaign, for example, in various states, depending on where I was in the state and all that, they would compensate the union I worked for my time. And so I would go out there and work on the campaign. So, back in 2007, what the Obama campaign was doing early on that summer in 2007, they were basically inviting people from all over the country and other parts of the world to come down and spend 3 days in Chicago and get a training on how to do field politics.
Okay.
We touched on other things too, commercials and stuff like that, like, what to look for and what's effective and stuff like that. But it was primarily focused on field politics, and how to make connections in your neighborhood and how to get out the vote in your neighborhood, things like that, how to be like a precinct captain for the campaign. But it also ended up, a lot of the people that came down to that were people that were going to work on the campaign. They eventually became campaign staff, some of them, many of them. I bring that up just because
I got to interrupt you. I got to interrupt you for 1 second. Guys, this is just in on Florida. We're 49.2% for Biden with 4,800,000 votes in for Biden. And it looks like 49.9% for Trump with 4,956,000 votes in. So we got a tight race going on down in Florida right now. Sorry
Any
about that.
Any idea how much of that is early vote? No, that's okay. Any idea how much of that is early vote?
So Florida, like Arizona, from what I heard, Florida actually had as many early voters in as they did in the 2016 election. So the same thing happened in Arizona. We had as many early votes in as we had total votes in 2016 almost. So out of that count, though, no, I'm not sure how many are early votes. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, the way I understand it from just anecdotally and from what I've heard on the news, a lot of that vote has been a lot of the percentage of Trump voters in that vote are a little higher than what was expected. I mean, he's still behind in the early vote there, but a greater margin for him. Anyway,
it's going to be an interesting run.
They seem to be saying on the news, Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
But,
so you were saying, sorry about that.
No, that's cool. So anyway, I bring that up just because 3 days a week back in 2007 in that summer, I did those trainings. I was training these people, about 60 to 80 people a week for the campaign, and a lot of them went on to become campaign staff, and then it was a lot of fun actually, because the following year when I decided to go on the road for the campaign in different states, I was meeting a lot of these people that I had trained, the summer before, and it was a lot of good times, a lot of hard work.
But
Okay.
so in addition to doing those trainings and things like that, like I worked in a few states for the campaign. Notably for me, I think I spent some time in Missouri before Super Tuesday, where we pulled it out with a very, very slim margin. But I felt that was where the ground game really eked it out. And they'd given me a budget, and we did a big canvas there.
So
Throughout St. Louis and Kansas City.
So I remember that campaign. All right, and you were all in for Barack Obama. Okay, and what was it that you
100%.
liked? So what was it that you believed in that he said? Like, what was it about Barack Obama that had you all in?
It was all about working people for me, man. It was all about making an economy for working people, and fixing the problem of the 1%, and that whole sort of milieu, that whole movement, having to do with that. That was primarily what drives me.
So So what happened?
I started to realize that I wasn't the one changing.
What do you mean?
I still am driven. I'm still driven by the plight of working people in this country. It's just that it's the forces on the right that are. It's Donald Trump who's fighting for working people.
Okay.
I just got to say that the very heart of the whole thing is the more and more the Democratic Party moves towards socialism, the less and less it's fighting for real working people, because socialism drives down the quality of life for working people overall. That's like the mild, the kind way to say it. People who advocate socialism, I think it's important for them to understand the history of it, and how, Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong, these guys were killers, and it is a failed policy. But for some reason,
I agree with you there.
Some people really espouse this, and the more and more the Democratic Party moved towards socialism, the farther and farther it moved from me. Because throughout my entire career, I've always been a capitalist, always. And I've always valued the fact that the free market and freedom of speech and freedom of expression and freedom of religion, all those things are tied into are tied in together. And
well, and
that's
I think
why this country is the greatest economic engine the world has ever seen, and we're also a free people.
So I think that's where we were always able to meet halfway. You know what I mean? We were always able to meet in the middle and say, that we care about this country. We care about America. We want to see it do well. We want to see businesses thrive. We want to see people put to work.
That's what I love about you, Larry. And that's what I love about you, and I loved it then.
That's where we were able to meet and work on empowering the ability of people to create a better world. And look, I'll be the first one to admit, I think JFK is one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. But he comes from a day of issues-based Democrats, and we're not looking at that today. Okay, we're looking at socialists. Yeah. We're not the Democrats of today, or rather the liberals that we're dealing with. They're not, policy based. They're not issues based. They're emotion driven, and that's not what we need to be dealing with in this country. True. The Kennedy Democrat of old has become the Soros liberal, and I'm sorry, but that's not making this country better. Okay, Biden walking in and increasing the tax plan.
I couldn't agree with you more about being emotion driven.
Oh my goodness, it's crazy.
That sort of leads me into and that sort of leads me into something that I think for a long time has been forming within my thoughts, and the idea of competency. When you take a look at the presidency of Donald Trump, it is overwhelmingly he's overwhelmingly a competent person. Everybody knows that he made promises and he kept the promises.
Yep.
He is overwhelmingly a competent leader. And if you look at just little things, it drives me nuts. I mean, everybody thought he was going to be this impetuous kind of person with his finger on the button and like a warmonger and all that sort of thing. Meanwhile, Iran shoots down an unmanned drone, and the liberals in the media start pushing the president toward doing something violent. And he asks, his people, and he says, "How many people are going to die if we take this particular course of action?" And they said 150. And he didn't opt for that. He's a human being, and he's a man of the people. That to me is a statesman, somebody who looks beyond the political calculation and says what is right for our people and what is right for all people. He's America first, but by putting America first, he also puts our allies way up there. I mean,
we're going to interrupt real quick.
No imagination at all.
We're going to interrupt real quick. We're going to go back to an update on Fox for an election update.
Come on the air here. Donald Trump continues to increase his lead.
That's a lot of vote. 86% of the precincts in.
I would agree, yes. I think you're exactly right about that, Brett. If you follow this vote throughout the day, Democrats had a clear lead in that early vote.
Starting to look really good for Florida.
Before today, they were well in the lead. Donald Trump won the state by 100,000 votes in 2016. There are some observers throughout Florida today that are looking deep into these numbers, and they think he can ultimately
win the state by
190,000.
It looks up.
If that's the case,
190,000 votes up. Looks like in Florida right now.
And then we would move to a different contest, perhaps up here in Georgia, to see whether or not the Southeast stays red in 20.
That's the first part of the Trump path, is the Florida part. Bill, we'll head back in just a minute.
Thanks, Bill. So as results continue to come in tonight, let's bring in Tucker Carlson, host of Tucker Carlson Tonight. Tucker, great to have you with us. It's 8:15 on the East Coast. What are your thoughts as you look at what we've heard so far?
Kind of not what we were told to expect. I'm especially interested in Florida. It does look like the president's got a very good shot of winning. But I'm interested in this because elections tell you what the parties actually look like. Not what you imagine they look like, but you find out who voted for them. So the coalitions become really clear. And in Florida, the population center, of course, Miami-Dade County, biggest county in the state. Hillary Clinton 4 years ago got 334,000 votes there. An hour ago, with 84% reporting, Donald Trump had already outstripped that by more than 100,000 votes. Now, Miami-Dade is 70% Hispanic. That's not what you would have expected if you've been watching for the past 6 months this attempt to racialize everything, to make Trump the greatest racist in world history. You would expect, whether you buy that or not, you would expect that that would depress the votes for Trump in Miami-Dade County. But the opposite happened. He's doing better there with non-white voters than he did 4 years ago. Now, I'm not exactly sure why that is. I suspect, the BLM message is a mixed blessing. It doesn't appeal to all voters in the same way, and it turns some off. And some of those are Hispanic voters. But we'll figure it out in the coming weeks. But the obvious lesson is this is not what people predicted. This morning, the New York Times, Nate Silver, had the president's chances of winning Florida at 31%. So you have to kind of wonder, how did that, these are smart people. They have access to all the data. They've thought about this deeply. It's their job to think about it. How could they be that wrong on the day of the election? And again, I'm not quite sure I know the answer, but at some point, we, the media, need to pause and ask ourselves serious questions about how we're thinking through what's going to happen and how we present it, because our predictions affect outcomes to some extent, and they also, of course, determine our credibility. People judge us based on our prediction.
Well, I think people are starting to get tired of fake news, and I'm sorry to say that Fox is unfortunately falling a lot more into that category these days than they were before. I've got a break for a minute. If you hear the dog going off in the background, that's Peyton asking me to go out. So what we're going to do is I am going to pull in Dave. I'm going to pull in your walk-away moment, if you don't mind, and I'll be right back.
In 2007, 2008, I worked on the Obama-Biden campaign ticket for president. I fought hard for Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And the reason I fought hard was because I believed that they would be on the side of working people. Fast forward a couple of years, and we saw President Obama, the president that I fought tooth and nail. I fought blood, sweat, and tears to get elected. I witnessed him at a prayer breakfast trying to explain away ISIS and Islamic terrorism by comparing it to the Crusades.
remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ.
You can see how these seeds of anti-Catholic hate, you can see how that hits home. The statue of the Blessed Mother in front of the Catholic high school that I went to was defaced back in June. I believe, and I was taught, that we have inalienable human rights. God granted us these rights, and it's the job of government to protect these rights, which are enshrined in our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. We believe in the freedoms that our forefathers saw fit to enshrine into our Constitution. And it's so important that we fight for those freedoms because we're only one generation away at any given point in time to losing them. You know, the work I started years ago, working for the working person in our country, is the same work I'm doing today. It's the same cause that we're fighting for today. The difference is it's not the cause on the left. It's not the socialists on the left. It's the cause of freedom-loving Americans on the right. It's true. Donald Trump can be a little rough around the edges. I know, I'm a guy from Queens as well. But as a practicing Roman Catholic, there's no one I'm going to trust more with my rights and my freedoms to protect them, to protect my freedom of religion, than Donald Trump. That's the choice we have today.
Fantastic. I think that turned out really well. I think you did a great job. I think the message comes across great.
Well, thanks, Larry. I appreciate that.
Oh, hang on. Where's that coming from? Uh-oh. There we go. Sorry, one-man show here. Oh, all right. So, yeah, no, I think that turned out really well. I've kind of been
Thanks,
holding on to
Larry.
it.
I appreciate that.
Hey.
And listen, I got to say something to you.
Yep.
I've known you for a lot of years now, and I just have to tell you, I'm so glad that you put this show together, and for all the things that you're doing. You know, it's great to see, and I'm really encouraged and inspired by you. So I'm so glad you're doing all that. You know, it's really great. So thank you for doing that stuff.
I just called Indiana for Donald Trump, 58.7% to 39.5%. Those electoral votes are going to President Donald Trump. Fox News just called
Rock and roll.
All right. Let's take a look at the call lines here. All right. If anybody wants to join in, you can listen to audio if you're not going to be at the house. This is broadcasting live on Spreaker, which should be going out to any podcast, your favorite podcast app, or you can watch this on Twitch or Facebook or YouTube. Just look for The Larry Thorpe Show. And if you'd like to participate and call in, it's 520-900-TALK. That's 520-900-8255. All right, we're back with Dave Martino, who recently experienced his walkaway moment from the Democratic Party. He's a former DNC campaign. How do I say this, Dave?
Campaign worker for campaigns on the left.
Oh, okay.
And I was a campaign worker for the Obama-Biden campaign.
You ran the state of Missouri for the for a presidential campaign that won. That's more than just a campaign worker, I would say, isn't it?
I was the election day guy. Not the state director. That was somebody else.
Okay.
I came in to help him about 3.5 weeks out, just to be accurate.
Okay. All right. So anyway, what do you think we're looking at today? Where are the swing votes or the swing states? What do you think we're going to see that's going to be an upset? What's your forecast for the night? You got anything surprising for us or no?
I don't think I have anything surprising. I would just say strap in because it looks like, we've got this crazy situation where we're going to have to wait 2 days to get Pennsylvania. And I'm just feeling really positive about Florida. So
Well, I think we're going to be able to call Florida real soon. I mean, we've got states like Illinois that, you know, have extended their mail-in votes where all it has to do is be postmarked by today, and they're still going to count it 4, 5, 6 days later. I think that's a little ridiculous. But in reality, that's not a swing state, and we're not worried about Illinois anyway. So I think if you're watching Illinois from a presidential perspective, that you haven't really been paying attention.
Right.
So
I mean, I'm very optimistic about some of the blue wall states. I mean, I think that you know, I'm clearly swept up in a lot of the enthusiasm, but I think if we take a step back, you know, and look at Ohio and Michigan, you know, we can reasonably be pretty optimistic. So, but just we got to strap in and see what's coming.
So Fox News has already called Ohio for Joe Biden. Okay, and currently what I'm looking at is President Trump is winning, or has been called for Alabama, Missouri. Sorry, that just flipped. But Alabama, Missouri, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia. I'm sorry, those are West Virginia and Indiana. And Joe Biden has been called for D.C., Delaware, Rhode Island, Vermont, Maine, Ohio, Virginia, and Illinois. At least that's what I've been tracking so far. So the currently we're looking at 68 for Biden, 61 for Donald Trump, and that's if the Fox News calls are to be believed. Now, hang on, I'm gonna change screens off here and see if I can find something else that's present or has any different updates. All right, Yahoo News will pull that along in a second. Let's take a look. All right, and if you've just joined us and you're on here, if you've just joined us and you're on here, feel free to give us a call. The number is 520-900-TALK. I can bring up to 5 people on the line at one time, and we can have a conversation. I'm gonna be on here all night streaming live as we watch the results come in. So I'm just looking forward to being a part. All right, let's see here.
Hey, Larry.
Yep.
Hey, man. So may I? I'm glad you're going to be on all night. May I give you? May I call in just a little while?
Yep. I will talk to you later. Thanks for joining. Take it easy,
great, man. Thank you.
All right.
And again, awesome stuff.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
All right, so live updates.
Populous County, a water pipe has broken inside the arena. They had counted 86,000 absentee ballots. We don't know how many more they have yet to tabulate, but all the tabulation of those ballots has now stopped. We're told by election officials they may not finish tabulating those votes for a day or two. So depending how close the rest of the state is, we may not know the result of this critical battleground state for another day or two. That is because, again, a water pipe has broken in State Farm Arena. State Farm Arena is where they were counting the absentee ballots of Georgia's most populous county. And now that tabulation has stopped. Big development here.
But, Mark, do you know how many ballots we're talking about? What that means?
We don't know. We've asked that question, Gail, and we haven't got an answer for that yet. We know that there were 86,000, but apparently it's a very labor-intensive process. And what they are telling us is that it's going to take a day or two, which suggests to me that they have a lot to go.
Yeah. The irony is that across the country, so many of these major league sports teams open up their arenas to allow people to vote and to do exactly what Marcus said. tabulate them in a big open space so that it could be done quickly, but nobody accounted for the plumbing, I guess.
I was going to say, I'm no plumber, but maybe because it hasn't been used lately, it's not up and ready for the big turnout today.
And just to put this in perspective, Fulton County is a very, very Democratic county. Hillary Clinton won it by 40 points. So if there is a delay, it's going to be Joe Biden's votes that are sitting up in the air while they dry things out.
But John Dickerson, I love your knowledge of history. Have you ever heard of votes being delayed because a pipe burst?
That's insanity.
No,
you wrote the book.
But I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's an intersection between plumbing and history.
I know, but it's so funny because here we were thinking about foreign interference.
So Georgia votes are going to be delayed because of a water pipe burst at State Farm Arena. That's absolute insanity. Who took a crowbar to the water? Yeah, Florida's looking good. Gary, I've got some high hopes for tonight. I do think that we may see Donald Trump take Minnesota. I think that the riots definitely hurt. Let's see what CNN is saying. Just for fun.
Our stock market numbers are very close to record. Great stock market numbers and 401k numbers and everything else.
Stockbrokers and hedge fund managers did not build this country. You.
Okay. Thank you, CNN. All right, here's Politico. We are looking at, they're showing 88 Biden and 72 for Trump. Let's see, what do they have in here that I don't? They're calling Vermont and New Hampshire, Rhode Island, all for Biden. Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, all right, pretty close, 72. Where are they getting the other 16? They're calling Pennsylvania already. 6% of the vote is in, and they're... Okay. So we've counted 6% of the vote. We've counted 360,000 votes, and they're already projecting it for Biden. Okay. We have 53% of the vote in Ohio. Yeah, we need Ohio. Fox News already called that for Biden. I'd like to see that come back. That definitely is within reach, depending on what counties are reporting. Let's take a look at that.
Hi everyone, I'm Elaine Quijano. Welcome back to our election night coverage. The polls have already closed in multiple states, but voting continues across the western U.S. as Americans add their ballots to more than 100 million early votes. So far, CBS News projects Joe Biden wins Washington, D.C., Delaware, and Massachusetts. President Trump is projected to win Indiana, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia. Lana Zak is at the board. Lana, what's the latest?
Hey there, Elaine. We're still learning a little bit at this point. There's a lot more for us to figure out. At this point, here's where we stand in the race to 270. President Trump, having now just called an additional state of West Virginia, stands with 42 electoral votes, likely projected for him compared to 20 for Biden. Now, you may notice, though, that when it comes to the popular vote, they're still much closer in that. There's also something that I wanted to show you guys, if I can figure out the board, which I'm still honestly
So West Virginia, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Oklahoma.
Which is the history of how this electoral map played out in 2016. Obviously, Pennsylvania and
Alabama,
Florida, we have talked a lot about these two states. As you can see right now,
South Carolina.
they are still too close to call, but there's something very interesting that we're starting to see in some of these exit polls. The president's favorabilities in Pennsylvania, he's underwater there, 46% favorable, 53% unfavorable. And in Florida, we see the same sort of thing playing out, 44% favorable compared to 54% unfavorable. It doesn't mean necessarily that we have a clear picture of how these are all going to play out. As you'll recall, early on in the night, I said that we saw American voters saying that they were turning out in favor of their candidate as opposed to voting against somebody. But it does help to explain, I think, a bit, Elaine, about why we are seeing in Pennsylvania and Florida, two states that he won
Seth,
in the last election,
Ashley, I
that
think
the president
that
may be struggling a little bit more in.
Virginia will probably go to Biden. I'm hoping that it doesn't, but I figure it probably will.
I would be all thumbs on that thing. Lana,
Still learning.
No, it's just so helpful to have you. Thank you so much. We're going to be checking in with you in just a bit. CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns, meanwhile, is at the battleground state of Pennsylvania at her post there in Philadelphia. And Caitlin, for people who maybe haven't been watching since the earlier part of the day, explain why you are where you are and what might be happening just behind you there, beyond the camera's view.
Yes, good evening from the cradle of democracy here in Philadelphia. I'm in front of the Philadelphia Convention Center, and why I'm here is because all of the ballots for Philadelphia are actually right in this building behind me. This is where the action is tonight. This is where they're going to be counting all of those ballots, especially all those absentee ballots, a record number expected in this state tonight. Why we've been focused on Pennsylvania, not only because of its 20 electoral votes, not only because this was a state determined by just 44,000 votes in 2016, but because here in Pennsylvania, they haven't been able, by state law, they're not allowed to have started to open up those absentee ballots until 7 a.m. this morning. So that means that we're likely to see a delay in reporting results here in Pennsylvania because it's going to just take a while to open up those ballots as they have been doing here today. So this is a critical state. It's a state that both President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden have been spending a lot of time here. This is a critical battleground, and if it comes down to Pennsylvania, we may not know the results here on election night. But we're keeping an eye on this building behind us because that's where the focus is tonight, given these ballots.
So you have been talking to voters on the ground in various battleground states. What were some of the top concerns that people were thinking about, ahead of this moment, ahead of election night? Was there anything that they said or didn't say that surprised you?
A couple of different things that really stood out to us talking to voters on the ground here as they were dropping off ballots at early polling locations or at secure drop boxes was that how they are processing the biggest story of this election, which is the pandemic, was really interesting depending on who they were supporting. So supporters of the president told us that Trump did everything that he could on the virus, that they were focused on the economy and reopening and thought that was a top priority. And that's in line with the messaging that we've heard from the president while he's been campaigning. Talking to supporters of Biden, they were very much focused on the pandemic, the way in which it has uprooted their lives, and they see, as they told us, this campaign a referendum on the president's handling of the pandemic. What was really interesting is that according to all of these voters that we talked to, all of them were really focused on how to cast their ballots this time around. Remember, the pandemic has added all sorts of challenges to the way we vote in this country, especially here in Pennsylvania. They haven't had this kind of number of absentee ballots before, 3 million sent out. And voters were telling us that they've been very strategic about how to learn about how to vote, how to make
Lindsey
sure
Graham is in
their
the
ballot
lead
counts, how to check
for his
off
Senate run.
everything that they need to make sure it counts. Interestingly, though, a couple of other themes. We didn't really hear much from voters about the Supreme Court. Remember, heading into this election just a few weeks ago, we were wondering how big of an issue this would be. Voters on both sides really didn't bring it up unless they were prompted. Instead, it was the economy and coronavirus really shaping voters' views here in Pennsylvania.
That is interesting to hear about the Supreme Court because, of course, we know that President Trump had really kind of pushed forth his nomination and the Senate's confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett as a conservative justice, yet another appointee of President Trump's assuming a place there on the High Court. Well, Caitlin, we know that Florida, of course, is another key state that we are watching tonight. Remind our viewers, why is Florida so critical?
That's right. This is always a big battleground, and it's always determined by the slimmest of margins. We were on the ground.
All right, so Florida, we know that Florida is a big state. We know, or is going to be an important state in this election, and we know it's going to be close there. It looks like, what I've been seeing, it looks like Donald Trump is still in the lead. What do we got? 91% of the votes in, and we are in the lead 50.7 to 48.3. All right. That would be really nice to add that to the list here. Yeah, see, Politico is calling way too many of these too early. They are calling Pennsylvania, and that has 7% of the expected vote. They're calling Ohio. Ohio's got 53% of the vote in, but we've only got 300,000 separating. It's too close to call. North Carolina, we're down by 200. It looks like 200,000 votes. Again, that's too close to call, even with 71% of the vote in. Actually, that might be close enough to call. But Florida, yeah, Florida, we're up by 300,000. So with 89% of the vote in, I think that one's going to come our way. Let's take a look here. Okay. It looks like, yeah, Florida's looking good. Let's get an update on the Senate races.
He also would like to codify Roe v. Wade into law. Now, that's especially important as we're seeing at the court.
All right, so it looks like Mitch McConnell wins re-election in Kentucky. Chuck Grassley was in the lead. Too close to call in Maine. Oh, GOP Republican Tommy Tuberville. It looks like he is in the lead in Alabama. And it looks like we're winning in Tennessee and Mississippi. New Hampshire, Illinois, and Rhode Island are all leaning Democrat, along with New Jersey. No updates on Arizona yet. Whether or not Martha McSally will beat Mark Kelly, that will definitely be an interesting result to see. And Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene, a QAnon supporter who has promoted QAnon on her social media and is following the Save the Children and all of the campaigns, looks likely to win her election. Good for her. Okay. Polls closing at 7:30. CBS News estimates the North Carolina race remains a toss-up. The West Virginia race leans Republican. Closely watched North Carolina Senate race has seen a couple of October surprises. Incumbent Senator Thom Tillis, a Republican who tested positive for COVID-19. Democrat Cal Cunningham became embroiled in a sex scandal. No real surprise there. If you're not used to seeing that on the Democratic side of the aisle, then I don't really know what to tell you. You're not paying attention. Still in a close race, though, because they don't care. Let's see. CBS News estimates the Georgia and South Carolina Senate races are still toss-ups, and the Kentucky race leans Republican, while the race in Virginia is lean Democrat. All right, so no, we don't need them to. All right, so Alabama, many consider Democrat Doug Jones' tenure as a senator from Ruby Red, Alabama, to be a fluke. He won the seat in 2017 special election to fill a vacancy left by Jeff Sessions, who became, he was formerly Attorney General. Okay, it looks like, Tommy Tuberville is going to probably win in Alabama. Arizona's a tough election. Martha McSally already lost to Kyrsten Sinema. She was appointed by Governor Ducey to fill John McCain's seat, and she resigned and lost to Kyrsten Sinema. And then after losing to Kyrsten Sinema, she resumed her appointment in McCain's seat and now is running in the special election to fill that for the next 2 years after beating, my candidate, Daniel McCarthy. And now she's running against astronaut and gun grabber Mark Kelly, who is looking to support Joe Biden in his tax plans to raise taxes, kill businesses, support China, and take away your Second Amendment rights. With any luck, hopefully he will get sent packing. All right. Tight race in Colorado between Cory Gardner and John Hickenlooper. Georgia. I did not realize we had 2 Senate seats in Georgia up this year. Interesting. All right, I'm going to come back to that. Let's take a look and see what we've got on Fox right now. Uh-oh.
But it's true tonight. Martha, Brett?
You know, John, real quick, Ohio, we've got the board pulled up here, and that vote, as we said, early vote going for Joe Biden in Ohio. There was confidence, though, in the Trump campaign about the situation on the ground in Ohio, right?
Yeah, and of course, early voting tends to favor Democrats, but they believe as the numbers start to come in that things will turn around. They really do believe that Ohio is going to go into the win column for them. But this idea of if Florida is called, I mean, clearly it's not going to affect the vote because the vote's already been taken, but it certainly will be a big psychological boost for the Trump campaign.
Yeah.
All right, John, thank you.
It's worth pointing out that Florida started counting weeks ago. So they may be one of the states that in the battleground category that has perhaps the most efficient process that we're going to see tonight. So we do expect that we're going to be able to make, some call on Florida tonight.
They were afraid
based
of
on that.
2000.
Yeah,
exactly.
All
right.
They want to make sure they've got it, all those I's dotted and T's crossed.
All right, so it looks like that we are looking forward to being able to call Florida here pretty soon. We've got Tom on the line here from Chicago. Tom, thanks for calling in. Good to talk to you. How you doing?
Hey, Larry. Good, Larry. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to a long night, but hopefully a quiet win. How's that? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, the whole family's listening and watching your show tonight, buddy. Ann just stepped out, but we all want to say hi and support all the good work you're doing.
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. I'm just trying to pay attention to what's going on and share the evening with people all over the country. Anybody that wants to join in and call in. Unfortunately, out here, it's not possible for us all to be together anymore. You know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah, just watching, man. Ohio and Pennsylvania seem to be up for grabs right now. Like you said, Florida's going to get called soon. That's going to be in the red column. Michigan's looking good. I'm just scratching my head on Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I don't know about Pennsylvania. I don't think there's enough votes in to count right now, to call it right now. It looked like there was only 7% of the vote in, and they're already trying to call it for Biden. I don't care how much of a lead you have at 7% of the vote. That's impossible to call.
Well, it's such a huge state. Every county, the counties are just so different. Yeah, you can't. That's way too early.
And interesting, they're calling Rhode Island.
Ohio's got me a little nervous too.
Ohio? Yeah, Ohio's got me wondering too. They're calling Rhode Island for Biden, but he's not even in the lead on the count. He's got 47% to 50%, it looks like, and or 43% to 54% that Trump's got, and they're calling it for Biden, even though he's trailing in the count.
I've seen a couple of those. Yeah, they put a little checkbox next to them. I'm like, wait a minute, your math is obviously wrong.
Right, makes absolutely no sense. So I'm actually going to remove Rhode Island from the Biden count on my roster here, because that doesn't make any sense to me. It's like Alabama. They're calling.
So my
they're calling Alabama for Trump, and Trump's got 47 to 51, and he's actually trailing in Alabama, and they're calling it for Trump. Arkansas, he's winning 70 to 26. That one makes sense. Connecticut, Biden is winning 54 to 43. That makes sense. They're calling that for Biden but it's only with 8% in. It's way too early to call. Even from a sampling perspective, that doesn't make sense. Sorry, you had a question. Go ahead.
I was going to ask if you knew, so all the mail-ins and all the early voters, are they included in the numbers that we're seeing right now? Have they been tallied, or are they part of what's being processed as the night goes on?
So it depends on the state.
Or is that totally state by state?
It depends on the state. Every state has their own rules on that. So Florida wasn't allowed to open their ballots until this morning, I don't think. Arizona started counting their mail-in and early voting 14 days before the election. Every state's got their own rules on that. And that's one of the reasons we're kind of in this scenario. In Illinois, actually, my sister just postmarked her ballot today. So it's not even it's not even been dropped off. It's in the mail. And it was dropped off at the post office today. So now in Illinois, we're not really, watching Illinois from a presidential perspective, thinking that it's going to change anything by any means. That's going to be blue.
No.
Almost no matter what they do. But that in and of itself, we've got a number of states that have gone and changed their election rules and changed how they're handling this, and all it is doing is just confusing things and creating a nightmare. Let's see here. So House, we've got okay, so
unfortunately, it looks like
according to the news stats, it looks like In the Senate, we're looking at 42 to 35 currently, with 2 independents, 42 Democrats to 35 Republicans. Now, that's not quite as serious as you might think, because there was a number. Republicans had a lot more up for re-election than the Democrats did this year. That was kind of what we were talking about. If you were watching my posts about a month and a half ago, I was talking about worst case scenario for this election isn't actually having to do it again, or where we don't get the vote. It's if riots or something had happened in order to nullify the election, or something, they'd managed to pull something off to void the election. We would have lost, essentially we would have lost the entire House. And because they're all up for re-election, their terms would have expired before we could launch a second election. And the Republicans would have lost the majority in the Senate, and the Democrats would have been able to pick the Senate President pro tempore, who would have then become the president at the end of Donald Trump and at the end of Donald Trump's term. That would have been, from a constitutional crisis perspective. Oh, wow. I've got Yahoo News going on in the background, and I'm watching them count ballots in Washington, D.C., and they're wearing, there's probably nine, there's about 12 people in this photo, and three of them are wearing Biden masks. How terrifying is that? What a world. Oh, my goodness. Oh, so, how's everybody doing? What else is going on?
Well, Anne's on the seat of her pants right now, yelling at the
TV. Hi, Anne.
She is. She's dangling by a thread. I stepped away so I wouldn't have background noise. But, yeah, man, just want to call and show you my support, dude. Love what you're doing. And I'll check in with you a little bit later. How much longer will you be on the air today?
I'm gonna probably be on here for a few hours today. I'm gonna stay on and see where we're at as we go. I'm hoping that we can declare a winner tonight, so I'll probably be on here for a few hours yet. Exactly how much content I will have on that during that time, I'm not sure, but hopefully somebody will send me some good videos. It looks like Fox News has got 91 electoral votes that they are calling for Joe Biden. They are calling North Carolina for Joe Biden, and it looks like they're calling with a 91% certainty that Florida will go to Donald Trump. So they're showing 91-71 Biden to Trump, but they are calling... They're calling Illinois, which we knew. They're calling Virginia. It looks like South Carolina, North Carolina is 73% in. They're calling that for Biden at 51.9 to 47%. North Carolina is 51.9 to 47. Ohio House, okay. Let's see here. What do we got here? 54% Biden in Ohio. How much of the vote? 55% in. So that's still too close to call, but it's not looking good. We're 300,000 votes down in Ohio. 53% in. All right. Let's take a look at the White House. See where we're at outside the White House. All right. Are you still there? Did I lose you?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's check in with Fox here and see what they've got to say about Ohio.
Gender in our country to win re-election, and he didn't.
So who else has a question for Bill Hemmer at the board? It's Ask
My
Bill.
son Peter does, but he's not here.
Peter's not here.
Peter's not here.
He doesn't get to play. Juan, what about it?
Peter can text me too, by the way.
Okay,
I'll do that.
Yeah, we'll get you on the hotline. The thing is about the Cory Gardner too is that he was the most bipartisan member there, and as you look across these states, if a Republican is going to lose, and you're looking at, you think there's going to be wholesale change. I don't really think so. John Hickenlooper was a governor of Colorado, and I know Colorado is more of a reliably blue state now for Democrats, but it's still fairly moderate, and so there's that. I guess, Bill, one of the things that I was wondering is, in Colorado, how much, we're talking about the suburban vote a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we can see that on
Can't
the
really
map
see
there.
it just yet. It really hasn't filled in just yet there, Dan.
Well, that's a terrible question then.
That's okay.
I'll do better next time.
How about North Carolina, Charlotte, Mecklenburg, all that
I think this is really interesting, guys. You have about 22% of the votes still to be tallied here. Joe Biden's sitting in a pretty good spot at the moment. You mentioned Mecklenburg. This is
Whoa.
Fast math tells me about 500,000, about 500,000 votes there. So that's about the mark where we were last time around 2016. Just hold on to these percentages and watch where we are now. So you're at 68.4%, a little better than Hillary Clinton did 4 years ago. But in a race, in a state that was decided 4 years ago by, what was it, 3.5 points? Perhaps that makes a difference here in 2020. Just pop in here one more moment. This is Wake County, something to keep an eye on. Heavily Democratic. You get a lot of votes out there. Over here in Raleigh as well, you're going to get a lot of votes there. He's up at 80%. But still some votes outstanding, as we can see, from 2016. Well, Hillary Clinton met the number at 81,000 as well. So you're about 200,000 in Raleigh total votes from 4 years ago. Still have about 35,000 votes outstanding in 2020. Joe Biden's right at the mark where she was 4 years ago. Pop down here. I mentioned this when we came on the air a couple hours ago. This is Robeson County, one of 6 counties that President Trump flipped from Barack Obama from 2016. So this county here is largely rural and it's white, and the president's got 58% of the vote. Pretty good number there in that county. From 2016, he was at 52.5. So what's going on out there? Is the rural vote starting to come in? Is it starting to...
Bear with me a second. That was bad. Trying to prep a live view of the Capitol of Washington, D.C., outside the White House, and they are streaming with some horrible music. Sorry about that.
I'd love to bring in Karl Rove and get a look at Texas and the vote that is coming in there so far, Bill. About 50% Joe Biden, 48%, 48.5% Donald Trump. It's close, but there's, by my read, it's about 41% of the vote, and it could be a little bit higher than that. Let us know what you're seeing there, and let's see what Karl thinks about that.
Rove's out of my league, by the way. Go ahead, Karl. There you go.
Karl,
Well,
what
I
do you
don't know
got?
what that means, but I'm looking at the numbers. I've been playing with them. Right now, this lead is statewide is relatively close, about 105,000 votes. And you're right, about 40-some-odd% of the vote is still out. Bexar County, San Antonio is 88% in. Dallas is 81% in. Harris County is 82% in. Travis County, my home county, is 90% in. All of those are strong for Joe Biden. Tarrant County is 90% in. That's Fort Worth. And Trump leads there by 1,000 votes. So if you're a Democrat and you got 40-some-odd% of the vote out and the big cities are largely in, that 105 is going to disappear when Taylor County comes in, Abilene, when the East Texas, Piney Woods, Smith, Longview, others start coming in. If I'm looking at this, I'm happy if I'm in the Trump headquarters. I'm saying once again, it hasn't happened if I'm sitting in the Democratic headquarters.
Karl, what do you think the margin is in Texas right now as you look at that?
105,000.
Right, but percentage-wise, what would that compute to over time over the next few hours?
Oh, it's over the next couple hours.
Yeah.
I think it's going to end up being a 3%, maybe 4% win for Trump.
Do you believe that's tighter than you expected?
Well, no, because we got a problem in the suburbs, and the problem that you're talking about in Ohio and some of what we've seen in other states, in North Carolina, Virginia, it's present in Texas. And look, one of the certainties of presidential politics is there are always changes. There is no continual certainty. No. West Virginia is now reliably Republican, used to be reliably Democrat. Other states, Kentucky and Arkansas, they used to be reliably Democrat. They're now reliably Republican. Things go both ways, and Texas has changed.
Do you think that calculation puts John Cornyn in trouble?
No, not at all. Cornyn has been consistently running ahead of the president in Texas. In fact, tonight I bet the big story inside Texas will be that the Republicans will keep control of the state house, even after tens of millions of dollars have been pumped into the state. There's a guy I've never heard of in Silicon Valley who has spent $11 million in state house races, which means if you got 25 races that everybody was sort of looking at, $500 to $1 million in each of those from either Bloomberg and Barack Obama and Eric Holder, who had an effort involved in this, or the Silicon Valley guy and a bunch of others, the money that they've poured into an attempt to grab control of the Texas House so they can control redistricting for the U.S. House of Representatives that has to be done next year in our legislature is extraordinary. And you can understand why. I mean, we're a growing, dynamic state that next year will gain 2 or 3 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. And so the Democrats went all out, and it looks like we're going to keep control of the House.
See, Brett, I told you know it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Never in doubt. Never in doubt.
There,
right
and he's
there,
got
all
his
the scribbling.
He's got his
All
scribbling.
right, so sorry about that, Kirsten. She asked, I think they will have all the votes in even after all the problems with the polls. So it's going to depend on the state. Certain states, it's really going to come down and depend on the state. So, for example, and we were just talking about this, in Illinois, a lot of the mail-in ballots, they just had to be postmarked by today. So a lot of those aren't even being counted. They haven't been delivered yet, so they're not going to be able to be opened. So there's a lot of races that we're not going to be able to know the results of for a few days. A lot of the House races and a lot of the local state level races. Fortunately for the presidential race, because that is the Electoral College, we should be able to actually get a result today, hopefully, if we wait long enough. Because we should be able to get, at some point, most of the states will get to a point where it doesn't matter how many votes aren't counted. There won't be enough votes to change the verdict. So, for example, when you get to 95% of the vote that's counted, and there's only 200,000 votes outstanding, if President Trump is up by 500,000 votes, then you can call that relatively safely, or very safely, for President Trump. Now, some of the states that are being called already, we don't have final counts on yet. What we are seeing is they're being called based on the percentages and the way that the votes are coming in based on historical results in different counties. Okay, so for example, and I keep coming back to Illinois, but if you take Illinois, the 5 counties surrounding Chicago are going to pretty much determine that state, unfortunately. If you come to Arizona, Maricopa County, I don't think there are enough votes in the rest of the state to overturn what the decision would be in Maricopa, unless it's a very close call in Maricopa. If it was evenly split, then the rest of the state would be able to decide. But if Maricopa heavily leans one way or the other, then it's not really going to make much of a difference. So I hope that answers your question. If not, post another one, or go ahead and call in. If anybody wants to call in, the number is 520-900-TALK. Okay, that's 520-900-8255. And this is just an evening watching the polls for me. and watching the results come in. So, don't make me talk to myself. Even I don't like to do that. So, call in and keep us company. All right, the phone lines are definitely open. It looks like, still too early to call. Arizona, Florida, Pennsylvania. It looks like they're saying Michigan, which I think Michigan is leaning heavy towards Trump. Minnesota, Texas, and Wisconsin, and I think we're going to take Minnesota this year.
I want to go back to North Carolina really quickly, because that seems like a race where Joe Biden, for all of the time that he put in there, and they had Kamala Harris down there, Joe Biden visited there, it seems as time goes on that he's expanding that lead.
Yeah. North Carolina?
Yeah.
I think this is getting tighter and tighter the more we talk, guys, frankly. I mean, look where it's drawn in the time that we just came on a few moments ago, and you still have 20% of the vote outstanding. Remember, blue skews early, right? Then red comes in later. I think this is going to be razor tight right now as we examine the remaining 20% of the ballots that are still
That'll be
out.
something if we take North Carolina.
North Carolina. Just pop down here to Georgia. Reminder our viewers, this is real-time data now. So you're seeing it when we see it here. You got a large portion of the vote that's out here in Georgia. The president's sitting in the cat seat right now for a moment. We'll see how much
300,000 votes for the audio listeners right now in
Keep an eye on that. Fulton County.
Georgia.
Checked this a moment ago.
Just a reminder, Georgia tallies are going to be delayed because they're counting in... mute that. Georgia tallies are going to be delayed because State Farm Arena has a water line that has been burst. #broken. And that's where they're counting all of the votes. So those numbers are going to be late, very late.
The inside numbers guys in the Republican Party in Florida, even at midday today, said Donald Trump, based on the current track of in-person voting today, that he would win the state by upwards of 4 points. That's still possible with 9% of the vote out in the Sunshine State tonight. It looks like he's going to win that today.
Florida's looking really good for us right now.
The Fox News Decision Desk can now project that Democrats will retain control of the House of Representatives and expand their majority by at least 5 seats. That's a major boost for Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who has pledged to roll back much of President Trump's first-term agenda if he loses re-election. So some thoughts on that from our panel. Dana, there have been projections that Democrats could pick up as many as 15 seats.
You heard it there. Fox News is projecting
your thoughts on that call?
Well, again,
that they retain control of the House and that they pick up another 5 seats.
If you think back to 2018, when we were here doing midterm election analysis, there were 18 seats that the Democrats were able to flip from red to blue. That was a lot. That was enough to get Nancy Pelosi back into the speaker's role. Now, remember, those 18 were against impeachment of the president. They wanted her to be much more conciliatory towards the president when it came to a second stimulus bill. That never came. And yet they all held on. They were able to raise much more money than the Democrats. They have this as than the Republicans. Carl was mentioning Act Blue. They were just flooded with money. So they were able to hold on to those seats. And not only that, but then they gained another 5, as if this analysis is accurate, maybe even more. And I think that when you look at the suburban districts, that will be interesting. And one other point on that is this is 2020, so it's the beginning of a new decade. That means that we have a census, and you will have redistricting opportunities. State legislatures all across this country as well could be changing again, and will Democrats decide to kind of try to solidify those gains? It's very hard to flip those back.
On your thoughts about this, about the House, Speaker Pelosi will retain control. She's obviously been doing this negotiation that was going nowhere with Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, and the coronavirus stimulus never came to be before the election. She holds on to control. It depends on what the rest of Washington looks like, how the House deals with it.
Well, I think the key point that strikes me is that, picking up on something Dana was just saying, you see that these suburban districts really respond well to moderate Democrats. And yet, in Trump world, oftentimes when they talk about the House, they talk about the squad, AOC, and that becomes kind of the leading figure, the face of Democrats in the House. But in reality, going back to 2018, the people who boosted the Democratic prospects in the House were these moderate and oftentimes female Democratic candidates recruited by Pelosi and a lot of the fundraisers. And I think that that's what you're seeing now grow. I don't think that the way that we talk about the House is in accord with the reality of the House in terms of the way Pelosi has managed it and in terms of the people who get elected to the House right now on the Democratic side.
Some Republicans are envious of the way she cracks the whip and keeps everybody.
All right, so it looks like Colorado and New York have both been called for Joe Biden. Let's get those updated on our list here. Hang on. And that's an update from DML app. If you're not subscribed to DML, it's Dennis Michael Lynch's updates. I am a big fan. You absolutely should take a look at that. Let's see here. Kansas, Louisiana, Nebraska. All right. And we've got North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Colorado and New York for Biden. He's reading 129. I'm reading 140. Oh. Well, that was dumb. Let's take a look here. Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, all right. North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota. Okay. Tennessee, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Okay, so you're not calling. You're not calling South Carolina. And yeah, I think we have that. Okay, and then for Biden, you've got Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois. Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois. Maine, Maryland. Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York. Rhode Island, Vermont, Virginia. Okay. All right, let's take a look. Go back over to Fox.
9 points, so Trump dramatically overperforming in Miami-Dade County. A second storyline is tremendous turnout in some conservative areas. Collier County, where Naples is, 90.1% turnout, and the Villages, conservative bastion, senior citizens in Central Florida, 88% turnout. So it looks like President Trump is so far running up big margins in conservative areas and keeping it close in Miami-Dade, likely through strength with Cuban voters and Hispanic voters. Finally, officials here say things have gone smoothly. The polls opened on time. There have been no security incidents, and the early ballots were processed and counted and posted early. Martha, back to you.
Steve, thank you very much.
Democrats retaining majority of the House, even picking up a few seats tonight, as we just told you. We're also watching the Senate very closely, specifically North Carolina, a race that could be a decider whether Democrats take control of that chamber. Mark Meredith is on the ground at Republican Senator Thom Tillis's headquarters.
All right, I'm going to refresh here. Apparently, I'm getting a note that I'm behind here.
Right, good evening. We're here at Tillis.
Let's see here. Let's see if that will...
of the Republican Party toward a more multiracial working class party. And regardless of what the eventual outcome is,
We've assembled an all-star
tonight. That's something that Republican strategists have to be thinking long and hard about, that the way that Donald Trump has been able to get more outreach and get more buy-in from minority voters has been through this conservative populism that he advocates. It's a really interesting thing that we know thus far as we wait to learn more.
You know, Byron,
it's going to be really interesting tonight to see if
not only was he running against Joe Biden, but he was running against the mainstream media over 3+ years.
If somehow Donald Trump manages to lose the election but wins the popular vote, it'll be really interesting to see if the left still wants to abolish the Electoral College.
Last week of the race in Pennsylvania, talking to a lot of Republicans who all strongly believed that there was something they called the hidden Trump vote, that there were people out there who intended to vote for Trump, but who did not tell not only pollsters, and that's where the media comes in, because they associated all pollsters with the media and they did not trust them, but some of them also didn't tell their friends or their coworkers or even their family. And I talked to some pollsters who were working for the larger Trump effort, and they believed it was a 2, maybe 3 percentage points. Maybe that's what we're seeing in Florida right now. On the other hand, not sure you can make that case in Georgia and North Carolina right now, but clearly the level of hostility and distrust toward the media among Trump supporters is just off the scale.
Byron, just staying with you for a moment, when you look at what Molly was discussing, you know, we see in a number of states the president coming in the 30% range with Latino voters in places where there's a large presence of those voters. Do you agree with Molly that we're seeing, you know, sort of an attraction to President Trump from those voters that we haven't seen in the past?
Yeah, that's a potentially huge development. Remember, after the 2012 presidential election, Mitt Romney lost to Barack Obama. The RNC, the Republican National Committee, did this huge study. They called it the autopsy. And the only conclusion they came to was that Republicans had to do more to attract Hispanic voters. And if President Trump is in fact attracting more minority voters, black and Hispanic and other minority voters, I mean, that's a very, very big deal for him. It's kind of ironic that some of the people who were involved in the RNC study opposed President Trump very, very strongly. But nonetheless, this is something the Republican Party has been trying to do for a long time.
And in addition to all of that, Molly, COVID is basically on this ballot as well.
Well, I think that is another issue that has been a very important thing for the Biden campaign to push, and also many people in the media. I think it is interesting that you were just talking about the feeling that Trump is running not just against Joe Biden, but the media. There were so many different ways that the media assisted the Joe Biden campaign throughout his entire campaign once he won the nomination. Prior to winning the nomination, they weren't so sure, but then they all got on board. Whether that was hiding negative stories about Joe Biden, hiding positive stories about President Donald Trump, hiding successes or whatnot, elevating the campaign themes that the Biden campaign wanted, or really an overemphasis on polls. We know enough right now to know that there has been too much emphasis on polling as opposed to the larger issues. Florida was supposed to be a win for Biden. Some people had it a strong win for Biden. It is not going to be, and that is interesting. And if we could have covered more about how the Democrats' left-leaning push toward, you know, some of these socialist messages, how that didn't resonate with minority voters and other people, you know, that would be an important thing for us to know, that if we rely too much on polling, we miss some of these stories that we could find out by talking more to the people who will be voting.
Last thing, turning to the Senate, Byron, we've got the race in Michigan, John James versus incumbent Gary Peters. That seems like it's a very tight race, and there was a lot of prospect for John James And as you look at it here, again, this is only 19% of
Minnesota's
precincts in Michigan, but how the president does in Michigan will affect this race. Going in, James was outperforming the
10% of the count in Minnesota or Mississippi.
I think you're going to see in some other states the Senate candidate outperforming the president. That one would be a very big deal. We all assumed, although it hasn't been called, that there would be a Republican pickup in Alabama, where Doug Jones would lose his seat there.
It's a sad day
Michigan,
when Texas is this close.
Challenging an incumbent Democrat. So Republicans, the way they had looked at this race is they got 53 right now. They pick up one with Alabama, and then they start subtracting. And Cory Gardner has already lost tonight. Michigan could be a huge, huge factor in Republicans keeping the Senate.
Molly, let's take a look at the South Carolina Senate race as well. Lindsey Graham versus Jamie Harrison. This is obviously a race that's gotten a ton of attention. Millions of dollars poured into this race, and this is how it shapes up right now. Also pointing out that we're just at 29% of the
Yeah, it's way too early to be talking about that.
For Graham, 43% for Harrison.
Yes, this was a race where, again, you had some early polls showing that Jamie Harrison was really strongly contending with Lindsey Graham. A lot of savvy South Carolinian watchers said that wasn't actually true, that these Quinnipiac polls were quite wrong. And I think tonight you will see evidence of that. However, those polls were very important for getting money to pour into that state. That race saw so much money raised to defeat Lindsey Graham. I think he'll probably do fine. But also, I just want to say it's a good thing to remind people that a lot of these results that we're seeing when states first close and you're starting to get results are those early votes. And it's worth remembering that the Democratic strategy was to get as many people early voting as possible. And so I think sometimes people are surprised when they see a race flipping so much from strong Democratic support initially as the early votes are returned into the later results. And part of that is a reflection of slightly different practices in how the Democratic Party voters and the Republican Party voters go about things.
Molly and Byron, thank you so much.
All right.
Very interesting.
So,
Speaking about flipping,
refresh Politico here.
Our casino owner here in studio, Britt Hume, follows the betting odds. And
Yes,
you're
I'm
saying
using
the
an ad
betting
blocker,
odds
and
have
no, I
just
won't
flipped?
turn it off for you.
Flipped completely. You may recall that they were sitting about 64, 65.
All right, so Politico and
down to
Google are
59.
both
Now they've
doing this. Now, check this out.
64.8% Trump, 34.7% Biden. Now, this is shades of 4 years ago when that race turned around.
West Virginia,
something like this
72%
time the
in.
evening,
Yeah, we've already
the
called
betting
that for
odds
Trump.
led the way. Now, look.
All right,
just
so
betting odds. They're not votes. They're not electoral votes.
refresh and no mute.
Surprising has happened tonight. In
All right.
fact,
so let's mute that for a second. All right, so Politico is calling Kansas and Missouri for Biden on their numbers here. We've got 18% of the vote in Missouri, and Biden is leading by 70,000 now. And see, you know what? I'm going to move that. All right. And in Kansas, we've got, does that really say 62 or 6.2? Okay, 62% of the vote in Kansas, and we've got a 0.8. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, you can't call that for anybody. That's just Biden is in the lead. We've got half a percentage point lead for Biden in Kansas with 62% of the vote in. That's way too early to call. Biden's currently leading in Minnesota. I want to take a closer look at Minnesota because I would like to see Donald Trump win Minnesota. Let's see here. Minnesota. Okay, so yeah, Minneapolis went Biden, and because that's the votes that are counted so far. Show me details on that. Really? Yeah, I think Minnesota's going to go Trump. I really do. Biden is up by 95,000 votes, and Biden is up by 95,000 votes, and most of the state has not reported yet. I've got a feeling that when this gets out to the suburbs, Minneapolis is going to actually vote Biden, but when this gets out to the suburbs, I think we take Minnesota here. Let's take a look. What about Wisconsin? Wow, I'm surprised Madison went blue after everything that happened. I'm very surprised that Madison went blue. Yeah. College Town, that's right. That makes sense. Yeah. All right. So Madison, Wisconsin, go blue. Everything else is going to go red. Or most everything else is going to go red. Wisconsin, I don't think we've got any issue there. Oh, let's take a look. See what's in Missouri. Missouri. Yeah, Missouri. Kansas City. Okay. Springfield and St. Louis. All right. So again, urban population going for Biden, and we've got 60,000 votes to go. I think we end up with Missouri. Yeah, Topeka, Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, both going Biden, but he's up by 2,000 votes, not even, or just barely. I think Kansas goes Trump too. So, I wouldn't worry too much about those states. North Carolina is interesting. Hang on, I need to be able to zoom in further here. Yeah, North Carolina is going to be interesting. I'd like to think that we could actually take North Carolina here. There's definitely a Democratic strength or stronghold in North Carolina, but I'd like to think that has a good possibility of going red this time around here. It's a sad day when Texas is only 100,000, not even 60,000 votes separating in Texas. What's going on? We got nothing in Arizona yet. Wyoming has already... Where's the numbers? We have no numbers. All right. That's interesting. Nebraska's been called. Yeah, see, 33% reporting and less than 10,000 vote. That doesn't even make sense. Where we get a check mark on that. Historically, I suppose, but yeah, I don't like it. 23% of the expected vote in Minnesota. They're 200,000 up. See if we can make up the numbers in the rural areas in Minnesota. Minnesota hurt. It bled in the riots, and I'd like to think that people learned their lesson. I'd like to think that people are going to stand up to stop that. I'd like to think that people are standing up and coming to the polls to vote out the leadership that did not do anything for so long in Minneapolis. It really is sad to see Minneapolis coming in blue. Oh, let's go back to Fox for a bit.
these completed interviews with all of these Americans, people who voted early, people who voted in person early, people who mailed in, people who voted on the day of.
Guys, I'm going to be right back. I'm going to go and grab a drink.
Once we can match that up with the vote that's coming in, we know how good our surveys were. We know how good of a job we did, along with our partners at the Associated Press and the University of Chicago National Opinion Research Center. We can see, how did it cook up, right? Is the turkey done? And the turkey's done in Virginia.
You're sure?
Yep.
Okay, if it's not, you're coming back.
Yeah, you're coming back.
I'm happy. I'm happy to, as a West Virginian, I'm always happy to come back and talk smack on Virginia.
Okay. Well, let's go to Florida, right?
Yep, let's go to Florida.
What do you think? Florida, it's 93% in our probability meter. Let's call it.
Well, if a probability meter was a decision desk, what would we do? You would just get rid of us, and Dana would save all that money on candy.
Now it's 95%, by the way.
The president is leading in Florida. It's not unreasonable for his campaign to be optimistic about Florida, but we would also remember that Florida is a land of alligators when it comes to calling races. And there's just no reason for us right now to take a chance on calling Florida, where there is still a considerable amount of vote out, and we're not quite sure given the high numbers of early votes. So we're just not quite there yet.
What about this thing about the absentee ballots requested in different states, Florida, North Carolina, and the ones that came back received? We know that there's a percentage every year, as Karl Rove talked about, that they just don't vote. It's usually 5-8% that don't get returned. But there's, when you're talking a big number, like hundreds of thousands of absentee ballots that have not come back.
Well, one of the things that makes it challenging for everybody, whether you're watching at home, whether you're on a campaign, whether you're a forecaster, whatever, when you turn up the volume on early and absentee votes by 50%, right? When you have this massive increase in all of these votes, it's going to make these numbers screwy, right? It's going to make things look different. What we do mostly in our work is compare this year to that year. This year to that year. How does it look now versus how did it look then? Because there are incremental changes in demography and incremental changes in turnout. This is one of the most significant changes in the way we conduct elections in our lifetimes, to go from basically 40% votes early and absentee to 60% in early and absentee. And if that's the kind of change you're looking at, you're going to see huge numbers of weird stuff if you compare it to 2016.
By the way,
don't worry about it.
The sizes of Donald Trump and Joe Biden, accurate.
Yes, they're correct.
They are actually that to scale.
It was nice of them to come and stand on either side of the map with us tonight as we figure all this out.
Let's bring in Bill Hemmer to continue the grilling. Bill Hemmer, you got Chris Stirewalt.
I think Chris is better in the bow tie, but I still like him nonetheless. Chris, good evening to you. I will tell you at the moment, this is Ohio for our viewers at home, because the last time we talked, Donald Trump was trailing. Now he's taken a lead in the state of Ohio. He won it by about 7.5 points from 4 years ago. Last time we talked North Carolina, I mentioned it was getting tighter and tighter. Look where the percentages are right now, 0.4%. A raw total of about 20,000 votes between Biden and Trump. Chris, are you able to tell where the outstanding vote is in North Carolina right now?
So because of, again, this mail vote phenomenon, we're not...
Oh, this is good news.
All of these outstanding ballots have come. But I can say this, we've got to be focused on our probabilities here instead of just the raw vote. And North Carolina is a key state. It is hard to get the president home without North Carolina. It's possible. But it is a key state, and it is one of the ones we're watching the most closely.
Of the remaining 14%, we can't say where it's coming from. But I can tell you, these are 3 rural counties right here that are still in gray. I was clicking in there a moment ago. There's not a ton of votes out there, but all 3 of those counties Donald Trump won in 2016. So the margin could change. But when you're talking about 20,000, you want to see it? Here we go. Go back to 2016. This is Caswell County, North Carolina. President beat Hillary Clinton by about 1,000 votes in 2016. What was the other one? Over here in Franklin County, President knocked off Hillary Clinton there by about 4,000 votes. So you got 5,000 votes right there, Chris, and we'll see how that comes in. One more state I want to point out, guys, because the map is starting to expand. Come back to 2020 here. Chris, this is Michigan with 20% of the vote in.
Yep.
You see the numbers tick there, real time again. This is Detroit down here. This Grand Rapids out here where the president was the other day. Wayne County, Michigan has a ton of votes in that state, and we're just cracking the surface right now for what Detroit could bring in for Joe Biden. Hillary Clinton clocked in at 500,000 votes in 2016. So we're starting to see a little bit of expansion in the map as we move away from some of the races we were watching earlier today. Florida right now, again, about 3.5 points, 9% of the vote outs. I'll come up to Georgia and show you what we're getting here now. Half the vote is in Georgia. Chris, I don't know what you see in the Peach State. But
Georgia's going to be
Donald Trump
delayed.
Right now with a 14-point lead. Fulton County is critical. A lot of votes there. I don't know what the holdup is in Atlanta,
What's that?
Chris.
It's the busted pipe.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, if that's the case, they better find a plug pretty soon because the votes are scarce at the moment. What do you see there, Chris?
So look, we're accustomed, whether you're talking about Georgia or whether you're talking about Michigan or any state.
Yeah, Georgia's going to be rough, guys.
A couple of blue dots in a big red ocean. It takes a lot longer to get all those votes in the densely populated urban areas in. And this is the rough math of every presidential election and in every swing state, because basically it's the city mice versus the country mice each time. This election is no different in that way, even if you add in the complexity of having the mail vote and the early vote. The truth is it's so much more densely populated in those cities. It just takes longer to get through in those counties.
Let me interrupt here. Is Joe Biden outperforming where we had him going in, or is Donald Trump outperforming?
I think it's too early to know that. I think Chris would agree with me in some of these critical states.
I think so far, how did Brother Wallace put it? He said that nobody had won a game on the road on the opposing team's home field yet. I think that's true so far. And we have not had an event take place yet that says that there's not been some cataclysm for either campaign yet. But as you guys point out, the clock is really running. And we are the map is expanding quickly, and a lot more electoral votes are on the table now. And here we go.
I would just say, these are the blue dots in Ohio from 2000. This makes your point, Chris. Right? This is Cincinnati, Hamilton County. This is Columbus, Franklin County. This is Cuyahoga, Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, it doesn't repeat itself all over the country, but that's a pretty good marker. Again, I'm showing you numbers from 4 years ago, but Michigan's quite similar. I hear the votes down here for Democrats, right? I mean, southeastern corner, Wayne County, Detroit, Pennsylvania, same year, same story. This is Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, and this is Philadelphia over here in the surrounding counties, the collar counties, so to speak.
60% of Democratic votes in Pennsylvania come from 5 counties, I believe. So
it's that way in
that's
every
really
state.
What this is about. It's about
except for
urban
California and
density
New York.
spread out across the country. We've all seen the presidential map where you can walk from coast to coast on red counties, but it's figuring out how those concentrated votes are going to go. We can count on Donald Trump winning rural America, and probably in some cases by a substantially wider margin than he did before. But it's those cities that we're watching
current
right now.
popular vote right now.
Martha, 6 million votes from 2016. You're about 1.2, 1.1 now. 19%.
All right, so Donald Trump is currently leading the popular vote.
As we point out, also down here.
Chris, a couple things. We've talked so much
over by about 1.5 million votes.
And, when I go through these
currently leading the popular vote by about 1.5 million votes, and trailing in the electoral votes.
Said they've known all along who they were going to vote for, and in a place
Wouldn't
like
that be ironic if
evenly split? But the 5%, the 3%.
Donald Trump won the popular vote and lost the electoral? I'll bet the Democrats wouldn't be trying to cancel the Electoral College at that point, huh?
A lot of those undecided voters, or a substantial portion of those undecided voters, didn't vote, right? If you're undecided late enough, you may just say, I can't do it. I can't pull the trigger for either one of these guys. And so a lot of them will do that. We can't dispositively say nationally in which way the undecideds broke, but we know that they didn't break for Trump the way they did when he was running as effectively a challenger 4 years ago, which has been his sort of the difficulty throughout for him, which is when he was an unknown commodity 4 years ago, you had a huge number of undecided voters with an open seat, and they broke substantially for Trump at the end and took him over. There was not that kind of effect this time, and instead, as you point out, we've been living in this.
Looks like we're about 400,000 up on Florida.
Basically, the same construct of this race from day one.
Sorry, just one more thing. What we've seen, the barnstorming over the past several days, and we saw the polls moving a little bit, and some of them going a little bit in Trump's direction. So are we to believe that that had an impact, that it drove out more?
Guys, the phone line is open. Go ahead and call in 520-900-TALK. That's 520-900-TALK.
stand out in the freezing cold to
8255
go to
and
a rally, they will do anything. So turning up his
join
base
me on the
wasn't really
show.
a big problem for him. The question is, were they counter-motivators for Democrats in those urban areas who see Trump on television 5 times a day and think about the coronavirus spread factor and that stuff, and that they get fired up to go vote too?
We're going to make some calls. You're not even in with the decision desk,
I know.
but I want to ask you one.
We'll tell you what they
one
are.
more thing. Trump's biggest vulnerability.
So I'm getting messages on Facebook.
Biden's biggest vulnerability, as you see it right now on this map.
Just think of the Mason-Dixon line.
All right, so I'm getting questions on Facebook. Just to kind of refresh for everybody. The popular vote is the total number of votes that are cast for any individual person, and the electoral votes has to do with the Electoral College. The Electoral College actually elects the president in December based on what the popular vote was for their state. Every state has different rules on how they restrain the electors, but simply put, whoever has the popular vote for the state will win at least the majority, if not all, of the electoral college votes. Back to Fox.
South Carolina will win re-election by defeating Democratic challenger Jamie
All right.
Harrison, who managed to throw a scare into Graham, a big one.
Lindsey Graham is just been called for South Carolina.
On any more interviews, he has managed to hold off and will win in South Carolina, and that is a big thing for the Republicans, Chris Wallace, because Lindsey Graham, he was threatened. They thought that Harrison could really.
Looks like North Dakota.
Yeah,
still
and
leading
Harris
for Donald Trump.
Enormous amount of money, tens of millions of dollars, a real money machine.
38% of Nebraska leading for Donald Trump.
And that was never leaning Democratic. It was, he got a scare and he had to campaign probably harder than he thought he was going to have to. But I think this was kind of what people in the end thought was going to happen.
You know, I just want to pop in there and
South
say,
Carolina's been officially called by.
It was $100 million.
And I called that a while ago.
Fox
Fox News is catching up now.
You think about what happened in Kentucky. You know, again, just a boatload of money from the Democrats. And what do you see in both cases? They were going after Republican senators that they saw as too close to Donald Trump.
But you wonder if the Senate Judiciary Chairman changed his fate when he ran that Amy Coney Barrett hearing in the last final days after Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Double check Politico here.
Helped him in the end there. So
and
the polls will be closing in 4 more states on the other side of this break.
All right, you guys are catching up to me here.
Which has been very interesting to watch in this cycle. The president has surged there in recent days in the Des Moines Register poll. We're going to have all the latest from the
It looks like we've got 26% of the vote in Missouri, and like I said, Donald Trump has taken the lead. Okay, and in Kansas,
my cousin,
mute this. And in Kansas, we are looking at 68% of the vote in, and we are up by about 43,000 votes, it looks like. So, refresh real quick and just make sure that's current, but yeah. All right, so Politico is calling 131 for Biden and 93 for Trump. Let's see if they've got anything that we don't have on our map that we can add. In New Mexico, we've got 45% of the vote in. And they've got Biden up by 15%. That's probably pretty safe for Biden. I'm actually going to change that on my map. Minnesota, we've got 30% of the vote in and 300,000 up. I'm not calling that yet. I'm not calling that. When does Minnesota start counting their ballots? All right, so all right, next is the extended ballot counting. Start processing absentee. Counties across Minnesota are getting ready to process absentee ballots on Election Day, with more than 1 million absentee ballots requested this year. Processing all of them is going to be a challenge. The ballot comes in. Let's watch this real quick.
The state are starting to process absentee ballots ahead of Election Day.
But with more than 1 million absentee ballots requested in Minnesota this year, processing all of them is going to be a challenge. Our Hannah Flood has more from Ramsey County.
So you received your absentee ballot in the mail. You fill it out, and then you send it back. But what happens to it after that?
The ballot comes in, it's given to our ballot board that is staffed of election judges. Those election judges either accept or reject the ballot based on the information given on the signature envelope.
Heather Bessler, the Deputy Elections Director for Ramsey County, explains after a ballot is accepted, it will end up in a counting center like this.
They're working with the gold secrecy envelopes that contain the ballots.
Wednesday was the first full day Minnesota counties could start taking absentee ballots out of their envelopes, preparing them to be counted.
To be able to process the amount of ballots that are coming in, we've had to just about double the amount of staff that we have on.
Now, the votes inside these absentee ballots aren't officially tallied until election night, but it still takes people power to process them beforehand. Ramsey County has already received a record-breaking number of absentee ballots, more than 104,000 of them, with more to come before Election Day.
It continues to...
All right, so this was done, this report was updated, originally published October 21st. So 2 weeks ago, it was updated the 22nd. So they've been counting ballots for at least 2 weeks. And at the time of this filming, they had 120,000, I think they said, or 104,000 that they'd received. However, there's over 1 million that are out. So let's see if we've got something new on Minnesota. I want to see what's... All right, so absentee mail-in processing and counting begin in presidential battleground states. All right, so absentee and mail-in. Yeah, 2 weeks or 14 days for Arizona. Wow, October 12th for Florida. So there should be, whatever they've received by now, they should be caught up. So that's why we're going to be able to get a count on Florida tonight. Because remember, so interesting, a lot of states were reporting that they had more. I know for Arizona, Illinois, Michigan, and I believe Florida. They all had more early voting than they had total votes in 2016. So how they're processing those is going to make a big difference as to when we're going to get the results. October 20th for North Carolina. So again, anything that they had already, they should have been able to keep up with that count. Now, Pennsylvania, on the other hand, could not start counting, processing or counting absentee or mail-in until this morning. Same thing with New Hampshire and Wisconsin. So let's take a look. Okay, so Michigan and Minnesota both could start processing them on in October. Michigan couldn't start processing until November 2nd, so yesterday. However, and only for townships with more than 25,000 people. It looks like Trump supporters are gathering in Little Havana in Florida. That's that Hispanic vote that's coming in for Donald Trump that's going to save Florida for us and make sure that this election won't be nearly as close as some of the previous elections. A lot of our Cuban population, Cuban American population, is coming from a is coming from a escaping from communism and not trying to see America turn back into that. So, all right, let's take a look here. That answers that question. So Minnesota is able to start processing on the 27th. So they've had 5 days, 6 days. Well, they've had 7 days. They've had a week to start their processing. They just couldn't do any of their counts until this morning. Actually, they couldn't even start their count until after the polls closed. So, but they should have all of their signature checks taken care of and finished by then. Let's take a look here. Thank you, Kirsten. Kirsten wanted to make sure that everybody knows, since we're looking at all of these red and blue states, that everybody knows exactly where you are allowed to own a kangaroo. So let's take a look here. Oh. It looks like... Yep, it looks like... hang on. Oh, that's... Looks like only Wisconsin, West Virginia, and South Carolina is it legal to own a kangaroo without a permit. Texas, New Mexico, Nevada, Idaho, Washington, Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maine, you can own a kangaroo with a permit. Thank you, Kirsten, for the red, orange, and green map. And we're going to go back to the red and blue one. That's awesome. You should call in and join the show for a few minutes. 520-900-8255. And if anybody's on Facebook and wants to participate or send me a video or a clip, just shoot it to me on Facebook Messenger, and we should be able to get it. I need to set up a... I need to actually set up a Discord for this. Let's take a look here. I'm going to run back to Fox and see what we've missed.
Say that they will not be reporting any more mail ballots tonight. About 76,000 have been tallied so far out of 350,000 that have been received. Does that surprise you? And, you know, everybody obviously is watching Pennsylvania really closely. We'll probably be watching it for many days to come, it looks like.
Well, first of all, secure the ballots. Let's make certain that's done.
Why are they not reporting?
I'm a little surprised because, you know, you
230,000 votes. It
we
sounds.
know that Pennsylvania is going to be. It's going to be Friday before they're able to sort of cut it off. This is a state that was supposed to have all the mail-in ballots received by tonight, by close of business, but instead they use some administrative measures and a court decision to move it till Friday. So I'd keep the people at it, but they may just say our progress is such, give them the benefit of the doubt. Our progress is such that we don't need to work 24 hours a day. We can get this thing done in the next day or two, and certainly before the deadline of Friday. But it's better that we have these contests settled sooner rather than later, even if it is an unofficial count and has to be subsequently certified by the Secretary of State.
Carl, while we have you, where are you on Texas? Are you bullish on Trump, Texas?
Texas, our Texas, all hail the mighty state. Of course, it's going to be red. John Cornyn.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Say, of course. I sure hope you're right.
Can I say something about North Carolina?
Wait. So you're done with Texas? You think it's GOP?
Yes, it's just a little ditty.
The Republicans will carry it on the presidential level. I'm looking at the number. Senator Cornyn is running like 6 points ahead of his Democratic challenger, despite the fact that something like $50 million is spent in the last 6 weeks, including $28 million by Silicon Valley Tycoon in the last week. And not only that, but the Republicans are going to keep the State House of Representatives, which, as I said earlier, was just a gigantic amount of money thrown on Texas. But we're going to hold on to that as well.
And what were you going to say?
Well, let me say something about North Carolina. This is why election nights are so interesting, because you may have just noticed that Trump's margin has grown a little bit. And not only that, but Tom Tillis is now leading in the Senate race. And what's interesting to me is it's a handful of counties. Mecklenburg, which is Charlotte, and Wake, which is Raleigh, and Greensboro, which is surprisingly enough Greensboro, they're sort of mostly all in. And what was happening is that a handful of counties.
All right, I'm going to interrupt this real quick. I'm going to leave the audio playing for a second. We need to pull this up.
And Caswell, smaller counties. They weren't reporting votes. Union County, which is just to the east of Charlotte, and Johnston, which is just to the east of Wake, they started, Johnston started to come in and flipped it, because these counties, Union County went last time around 81-19.
All right, 70% reporting in Arizona, and we have 220,000 vote lead for Joe Biden. I just want to go on the record and say anybody that voted for Joe Jorgensen in Arizona or any other swing state really doesn't understand how the Electoral College or how the politics works in this country. Look, I'm all for voting for third party, and it's your right to vote however you want. But if you're in a swing state, yeah, I'm going to stop that right there. Okay. Show everything. What else do we have? You got to be kidding me. Montana? $18,000 votes were trailing in Montana. How does that even happen? 300,000 votes were trailing in Minnesota. That actually makes sense. There's only 38% reporting. Let's get the... Oh, okay. Iowa, 13% reporting, and we're down by 70,000 votes, 69,000 votes. Okay. Well, this is going to be a fun night, that's for sure. I'm going to rotate to some live coverage outside of the Capitol here from Washington, D.C. Thanks to After the Action on Twitch. Let's see here. There we go. There we go. This may not be safe for work or children. This may not be safe for work or children. This may not be safe for work or children. I've got quite an echo here. I've got quite an echo here. I've got quite an echo here. Bear with me a second, guys. I've got a little bit of a... Bear with me me a second, guys. I've got a little bit of audio issue here. Bear with me a second, guys. I've got a little bit of audio issue here. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Why is that feeding back? Test 1 2. Test. Test, test. Yep. Test, test. Yep. Test, test. Yep. Okay. Test, test, test. Test, test, test. Test, test, test. All right, can everybody hear that? Are you getting a audio feed where it's coming through about 15 times? Audio feed where it's coming through about 15 times. Can you check that? Can you check that? We are watching protesters gather outside of the Capitol building. Outside of the Capitol building. All right, that's not echoing. All right, that's not echoing. My microphone is, though, quite a bit. My microphone is, though, quite a bit. All right, we're going to break for a few minutes, and, I will see you guys shortly. I'm going to try and figure this out. I will see you guys shortly. I'm going to try and figure this out. Test 1, 2. All right. Test. And let's see if that.
As much as possible going forward up and down the East Coast with a strong contingent of seniors, Latinos, young professionals, African Americans. The Republicans have outperformed, it looks like tonight, across all of those categories with higher turnouts than they had in 2016. So there was a lot of talk about how Biden was going to bring all these new voters to the fore, and indeed we'll probably find that he did. But the other story, which I think you're seeing playing out in state after state tonight, is
All right, is that working better?
More people into the party and then expanded the base from those blue-collar workers on out. So we'll see what happens as the night goes forward. But to me, Florida is the future for the Republican Party.
You know, Laura, this is just an interesting thing, and you talk about this all the time, about the president's policies toward China, being tough on China. Right now, according to the Wall Street Journal, the Chinese yuan has started to tank.
I just saw that. And what is that?
What does that tell you?
It's very significant because it means, at least so far in the evening, 64% on the overseas betting now lean toward Trump. And the Chinese are watching all of this. And right now, they are indicating to us that they believe the tariffs that Donald Trump put on a whole swath of Chinese goods, they're here to stay for the foreseeable future. And that obviously hurts their currency, at least in the short term. So that's a significant metric, but it's just how they're reading the data that's coming in right now. But I have to say, when we look at the sheer numbers of people who've turned out to vote, we had a very engaged electorate this election season. And there are a lot of people who've said that, you know, Joe Biden made a smart call and running on the pandemic and hanging back and letting Trump engage because people were tired of Trump. I think that was a, really misguided way of looking at things. I think, as you saw after he recovered from COVID, he has been nonstop. And I think a lot of folks, as time went on, began to really respect that he was fighting, in their mind, for every vote that he could get in those swing states. And it was a breakneck pace. Obviously, Joe Biden could not keep up with that or didn't want to keep up with it. And those crowds, which, again, a lot of people didn't want to talk about, they were a metric of energy and excitement that